All right, we're going to grab a seat again. Feel free to grab coffee or water while this is going on as well. You're more than welcome to eat while this is happening. Come on in. So we are absolutely honored here tonight at Celebrate Recovery to have Jonathan Epp with us. Jonathan Epp is a psychologist. Am I correct in saying that? Almost. Okay. I've been lying then all week, but works in psychology. Better. Okay, more honest. Good. But Jonathan Epp has been a big part of Celebrate Recovery here at Living Stones. He is one of the guys that helped get it started probably about 6 years ago. Yeah. Oh, it's more than that, because I've been here 3 years. Yeah, it's been, I don't want to age you, but it goes quick, man. It goes quick. But we've had him, as I shared with you guys earlier, we've had him for our leadership time, and he's here tonight. On your table, there is sheets for questions. If you would like to write a question, feel free to just write it out. Rather than us all shouting it, we'll just collect the questions throughout the night and kind of bring them up at the end for him to go through. There's also note pages there, but we are so glad each of you are here. We're glad for all of those that are watching us later at a later date as well. But tonight, let's give a big hand to Jonathan Epp as we learn about codependency.
Why don't we just, I don't know how many times you pray throughout the evening or whatever, but why don't we just start out with word of prayer? Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here together and to be in the midst of you. We know that you're always with us. But thank you for each other. Thank you for Celebrate Recovery. And thank you for the fact that we live in a country where we're able to come together, worship you, and fellowship with one another, be supportive of one another. And so we just ask, Lord, that you would speak to us in whatever way you see fit this evening, and that we would be prepared to listen and respond in whatever way you feel best. We pray these things in your name. Amen. Okay. So, thank you very much for having me. Just to put a correction in there, because I actually need to do it publicly if it ever is stated that I'm a psychologist. I'm a registered provisional psychologist. There's a difference, only because I have a couple of really major exams that separate me from being what they would consider to be an actual psychologist. I've been working on becoming a psychologist for the last number of years. I've got about 1,600 hours worth of practical experience underneath my belt, plus somewhere in there. That's divided up amongst a bunch of different things. But now I have 2 major tests to pass. One is a professional examination. It's a multiple choice exam, and it's horrible. Like there's like a 56% pass rate. It's absolutely low. And then the other one I have no problem doing because it's just, you have to stand up and talk to people, and I do it all the time. So I'm like, bring it. Like I'm cool with that. But yeah, so working on that. I teach at Red Deer College. I've been teaching there for about 3 years as well. I teach there part-time. They get me to do some intro courses and stuff like that because they don't have a PhD, and that's about as much as they can give me out of a master's degree. But I graduated about 3 years ago, almost now, with a master's degree in counseling, and I've been working in private practice, and I just started working with the Central Alberta Sexual Assault Support Centre last year in March, and just started full-time with them. It was almost 2 years ago, and just started full-time with them this year. So I've got 3 jobs right now, trying to make one full-time job out of 3, if that makes sense. I'm sure a few of you understand. So I don't want to talk at you this evening. I prefer to talk with you about something that's kind of dear to my heart, just because I find that I have struggled with codependency in my life for a good portion of my life. And so instead of talking at you like I'm some sort of professional who knows everything about it and all the rest of that stuff, can I just talk with you tonight? And we can share, our life experiences and everything else, that we bring all that wisdom to the table and enrich each other, because I really think that's valuable. We can become too knowledgeable, we can have too much book smarts and all the rest of that stuff, and that all starts to break down when we get out there into the real world and the rubber meets the road, and we have to deal with life head on. And so I don't want to talk to you like that. There are going to be moments throughout the presentation where you probably feel like what I'm talking about doesn't even fit your particular case, or doesn't even click or whatever. That's quite normal. We often paint certain subjects with broad strokes in the social sciences only because we speak in generalities, and that doesn't deal with the specifics of humanity, and that's a problem, right? And for me, I always want to acknowledge that. And so I just want to start off by qualifying what I'm about to present to you. If it doesn't totally resonate with you in your particular case, trust me, there's so many human beings out there, right? Like where that is their reality. Like, it doesn't totally fit the mold, and that's okay. I have a lot of respect for all of that. Codependency. So the need to be needed. I want to start off by just separating codependency from interdependence. Because being interdependent is something that I think, is actually quite healthy and can be. Like when we're interdependent on the person that we're in a relationship with, or that you're interdependent with each other, here at Celebrate Recovery, offering support to one another, that's interdependence. Like you're depending on one another, and you're counting on each other, but you're not codependent on each other. Does that make sense? And so there's a need to actually define the difference there. And so when we're talking about interdependence, help, understanding, and support. That's what you get. Find that you're in a relationship with somebody who offers you help, understanding, and support. You still find that there's resilience in there, resourcefulness, and inner strength for yourself, that you're still able to do things independently of the other person, while at the same time being able to rely on them from time to time, if you need. And then the last one that kind of is really characteristic of it, not in its entirety, but clear identity apart from the relationship. And it's interesting, because some people are really freaked out about that. They're like, well, no, aren't we supposed to have like one identity? And it's just like, well, no, actually, you're two very distinct people. God created you that way, didn't he? Wasn't that how he decided? He's like, hey, I made you the way I made you because I wanted you to be you. And even knowing that he asks us to change, and he asks us to grow, and there's lots for us to learn, and we do change over time. So it's not an excuse to not move or grow or anything. But he did make you as a distinct individual. He loves and cares for you that way. And he even brought you into a relationship with another person not to completely overhaul yourself and become exactly what that other person wants, but to actually be the person that you want to be, like that you are, that he created you to be, and even challenge that other person in ways, right, that our relationships normally do. And so interdependence, something that is, can be super helpful for us as human beings. Codependency is a little bit different. It has a tendency to be maladaptive and dysfunctional. Maladaptive. I had a great question asked me when I was giving this presentation the last time. I was like, well, what's maladaptive? Which is an awesome question, right? And there's several things that are maladaptive in life. Anything that is counterproductive to you moving forward and growing as a human being can be maladaptive in some way, shape, or form, okay? And it can take on many forms, and it can look like a lot of different things. If you're attempting to achieve a particular goal in life, but that partner is actually hindering you from doing that because they're constantly cutting you down, or they're taking away your financial ability to do something like that, or they're controlling you in some way, shape, or form, that's maladaptive and not helpful. So the codependent relationship has a tendency to be dysfunctional to a large degree, not just for one individual, but for both individuals. They cannot grow, not as a relationship, not as a couple, and they can't grow individually either. They remain stagnant. So it's negatively symbiotic in that way. They're dependent on dependence. So really, they both end up depending so heavily on each other that without that dependence, they start to feel as though there's something wrong. That they're either doing something wrong or that the other person's doing something wrong, and they end up lashing out or reacting in ways that are not healthy. And your true identity ends up getting distorted through all of this. Because who you're actually created to be and who you're supposed to, the way that you're supposed to actually behave in life and work in the world and function, starts to become distorted completely by your complete obsession with trying to make sure that that relationship's working. We're trying to make sure that the other person's happy. We're trying to make sure that everything's functioning on all cylinders. You lose yourself in the process. We end up seeing things like the enabling of avoidance of confronting fears and self-doubts. What do I mean by this? Well, if you find yourself in a codependent relationship, and whether or not, because I'm just going to pick on an abusive situation, but I mean, there's an abuser in the situation, and the other person's the one who's codependent on that abusive relationship. They end up not confronting their own fears and self-doubts by constantly trying to make sure that the other person's happy, because it makes them feel good. That's how you become codependent. Because it does feel good when everyone's liking you, when the situation's all good, when feathers aren't being ruffled and all the rest of that stuff. But you cease to be able to confront fears and self-doubts or even issues that you find within yourself. Because you're so consumed with trying to make sure that that other person feels good and therefore you can feel good as well. You started up, and honestly, I have to be careful here because in Christian circles, we understand that we are going to be sacrificing of self from time to time. That's normal. That's part of what we understand to be the creed is kind of laid out before us, right? Die to yourself, pick up your cross and follow me. Those kinds of things are very, they ring in our ears. And so it's hard for us sometimes when we're trying to go, okay, so where's the line? But if you have to sacrifice, and give yourself up completely to the neglect of yourself, to try to take care of that other person, that's when you're crossing the line. When you're no longer able to take care of yourself or even see, people lose their identities in relationships that are codependent. They will literally say, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know who I am apart from this other person. Apart from this other person telling me who I am, how I should be, what I should be functioning like, I have no idea. Which is sometimes the fear of why we even leave. We end up finding ourselves in situations where we feel this incredible need to be needed. And if we don't feel needed, there's something wrong. And I know that from experience, because I was in a relationship like that. I was very codependent on the other person, and the fact that I just wanted to know that that other person needed me, and I was willing to do almost anything in order to make sure that I was feeling that at all times. And because if I didn't feel that, I felt like they didn't love me, or they didn't care about me, or they didn't want me, or whatever. Alone, inadequate, insecure, and unworthy is usually how you end up feeling in the event that you do feel some sort of separation or you don't feel that need to be needed. You feel very alone. And you do feel inadequate on your own. So how does it develop? Well, a number of different ways. It's interesting. If I actually talked to a whole bunch of people, and we all sat around a table, and there was 20 or 30 different people there, and they all were part of codependent relationships, and I asked them, how did it start to develop for you? We would get completely different stories from all of them. Because they're all unique. Each relationship is unique. That's why we can't handle relationships all the same. If I'm working with a couple in a marital situation for marital therapy, can't handle them the same from one couple to the next. They're unique people. It's a unique relationship. Right? But there are some fundamentals that are in place, right? Needs and wants are secondary to the caretakers. That's kind of where it starts. It's foundational, right? So sometimes we see this start to develop even in childhood, where the children actually think it's more important to meet mom and dad's needs than it is to even, think for themselves or care about themselves or whatever. So they're, how most children are, right? They can be pretty consumed with themselves. I've got a 3-year-old right now. He's pretty consumed with himself. It's all about him. Right? Cookies in the morning, whatever he wants, it's that's what he wants, and he's telling us that. But it can be through positive and negative reinforcement and punishment, and over a long enough period of time, that these children all of a sudden start to learn that their needs and wants don't matter, and that they're secondary to that authority figure in their life, that person that's more important, that other than self that's more important than me. And as long as they're happy, I'm safe. Or as long as they're happy, I'm happy too. And that's where it starts. For some. Not for everyone. But it can start there. When they do display dependency needs, it is met with indirect or direct punishment. So if they actually express themselves as kids, and this even actually goes into adulthood. When you start to get into a relationship, where you start to express that you have certain needs in a relationship, it can actually be where the other person lashes out at you or punishes you, quote unquote, for telling them your needs, your desires, your wants. But anyway, if we're talking about children, since we started with them, they start to display their needs and their wants or something like that, and then they end up getting punished as a result of that. Right? All of a sudden, mom and dad quit talking to them. They pick up on that kind of stuff really fast. And so it internalizes at that point in time. So then we start to see things like they deny or repress thoughts, feelings, impulses to satisfy the needs of others. So it just becomes a process. And what's meant to be a short-term coping mechanism to deal with a particular situation becomes a long-term trait over time. Like it just becomes secondary, it becomes a part of their nature. As long as I'm doing this, then I'm going to get this result. As long as I'm doing that, I'm going to get that result. And they just keep getting reinforced over and over and over again as time goes on. And then that can get carried into other relationships. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't just start in childhood, but it's just like, it's an easy one to pick on, because that's where it does start sometimes. And that's where it does get internalized. And sometimes children, you'll be talking to them, they won't even know they're in a codependent relationship later on in life. And if you ask them, where this started, they're not even able to tell you. Like, they can't even verbalize it. It's been so internalized for them by the time that they're talking to you as an adult that they don't even know where it started. Okay? They can't name it. That's quite an experience for them, and it's a familiar one for me as a clinician working with them, where people can't say the things that come. Feeling selfish and guilty for thinking about themselves. They finally get to that point. Once they've done all this, once they've kind of had this happen, and they start to do this gets it's met with punishment and all that stuff. And they start to deny and repress their thoughts, feelings, and impulses long enough. Then when they decide to actually do something, like think for themselves or about themselves or something, they start to feel guilty and selfish for doing that. How dare I, think for myself? Or how dare I take something for myself or do something for myself? I just found that this quote was really good. I don't like putting a ton of information on my slides, but I thought it was really good. Once grown up, children raised in such circumstances become saddled with a deep internalized program, regularly reminding them that acceptance by others, they had to make their own needs, which is at a point that they may only dimly recognize subordinate to others. So they needed to become secondary. And that others' needs would need to be met first. Those needs need to be met first in order for me to have any sort of really good relationship here. So no, it doesn't just only develop in our upbringings, right? But it can make us predisposed, what they call predisposed to it. Just because it's more familiar, right? If we end up getting exposed. It doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily develop a codependent relationship if you come from a situation like that, nor does it mean that you won't develop a codependent relationship if you don't come from something, or you don't come from something like that. So in both cases, it's not a sure thing, it's not deterministic, but it can can turn into something like that. Abusive relationships can rewire our thinking process in our parents. See, the beautiful thing about our brain and the way that God created us, and I think it's absolutely wonderful news and amazing, is that our brains are what they call plastic. That from the time that we're conceived to the time that we die, we've got neurogenesis happening the entire time. And that our brains can constantly rewire. Like, it's an amazing thing that God created us that. It's how we learn. It's how we create new thoughts and new ways of behaving. It's not an easy thing for that process to occur. Whenever we talk, like whenever I'm working with people, one of the things that they get really upset about is how quickly, or how not quickly, change is happening. Because they'll come to me for like 2 or 3 sessions, which means I've seen them for about a grand total of 150 minutes. And they're like, well, how come my life isn't different yet? I paid you a lot of money. How come it's not done? Like, how come it's not changed? But if you think about it, the fact that we can even say with a certain amount of certainty that after about 6 to 8 sessions, people's lives can be significantly changed after living some way for 30 to 40 years, how much of a miracle is that? To me, that's God's handiwork. Right? I mean, He designed us in a way where we can actually change. Now we've got instruments, which is interesting. For the longest time we didn't know. We were making up theories on the idea that our brains actually changed, quote unquote. But now we can see, thanks to the beautiful instruments that we have from science, that our brains literally do change. The neurons literally rewire and make new synaptic connections when we're thinking differently or we're having new thoughts. And so the problem with that is that abusive relationships or experiences of various kinds can shape our brain also. And that's where this starts to happen. You can actually, when you get into a situation, a relationship that's not healthy necessarily, you can develop codependent tendencies, even if you're not predisposed to it or you've never been subjected to it before. Because subjected to it enough, it's like going to therapy, except for the wrong kind. Right? In the wrong direction. So just to give you an idea of the complexity of our brains, and I love putting this up here. We're born with 100 billion neurons. Each one of them has 10,000 synaptic connections. The number is so big when you think about how many connections there actually are in your brain for you to be able to think and function and do. It's like I can't even, every time I plug the number into a computer, it kind of goes, right? Like, it doesn't know what to do with it because it's just like, it's too big, right? And so that's an amazing thing. That's the complexity of our minds, and that's why we're able to learn, unlearn, and relearn how to do things. But I want to talk to you that this is hope too, because it's like, even knowing, like, yeah, okay, so there's a difficult element to this, we can learn pretty bad behavioral patterns, there's hope for everyone. Because it's like, no matter what you're going through. So what does it look like? Self-worth depends on the validation of others and external cues. That's the main thing that we see. In fact, I've had people so willing to forfeit their own, their own efforts in this area that they're like, I don't care that I don't feel like I have self-worth apart from anyone. I just want someone always in my life. And they're quite honest about it. It's just gotten to that point in life where they just don't feel like they have any worth apart from anyone else, and they want someone to constantly tell them how much they're worth. And that happens. Fragile sense of self-worth as a result of this, you can understand why. And I put worth in here instead of self-esteem, because it's not like a huge harper on self-esteem. I think self-esteem is important and whatever, but I think more things like self-efficacy, your self-worth, those things are truly important, because God gives us our worth. And so many people are without worth in this day, and they're looking to other people to tell them how much they're worth. Right? But they have a fragile sense of self-worth because it's totally dependent on what other people think of them all the time. especially their significant other. And if their significant other is having a bad day, then they're the most horrible person in the world. So imagine the roller coaster that they're on. Oh, whoops. Lack of an ability to assert the needs and relate their own needs in a relationship. They don't want to because they've learned over time this isn't a healthy thing. This isn't good. When I do, I get punished for it. It's not going to have a good result. The other person's feelings, needs, wants, and desires are more important. Others' attitudes, actions, and reactions typically govern what is said and done, just meaning they're constantly reading people too. So you're sitting down at a table and you're listening to everyone talk, and you start to pick up on the fact that everyone else has a particular view or a particular opinion or a particular way of looking at something, and you don't say yours. Because it doesn't have as much value or worth as anyone else's. Because you don't agree with them, but yours comes secondary to everyone else's anyway. Behavior is dictated by fear of being alone, abandoned, spurred, or rejected. It looks like love, and it comes across that way, because it's like very self-sacrificing. And it's kind of like constantly putting themselves out there. I'll do anything for you, I'll serve you, I'll do, like all the rest of that. So it comes across as a very loving sort of thing, right? But at the same time, it's dictated completely by the idea that they might be abandoned by that person if they don't. So the motivation is just, it's fear, which is unfortunate. So their loyalty to others is so intense that it can hurt them. What do we mean by that? Well, we mean that you're willing to sacrifice your morals, your ideals, your values, in order to make sure that that relationship is maintained. You'll see to it that the way that you see things and the kinds of things that you want to stand for, they come secondary to making sure that this relationship works. You'll even stay in situations that are completely abusive. Personal values, second guess sacrifice, or ignored when they're in conflict with another person. They're constantly second guessing themselves. Because it's like, well, that doesn't, that person's got to be right? Don't they? Like, I'm wrong. Guaranteed I'm wrong. Oftentimes it doesn't work out well for them. I'll never forget the one time I was in a relationship once. This is the one that became very codependent eventually over time. I remember I was talking to the person because I didn't feel it was right that this person had gone out. I was supposed to be in a relationship with this person. We had been seeing each other for a couple of years. And then he got out and had an affair with another person. And I got angry about it. I was upset. Not angry, but upset. Very sad, very upset. And when I tried to express why I was upset, they slammed me for it. And told me I was being selfish. And so you start to become very, you don't trust yourself, essentially. Right? Even if everything inside of you is telling you. To protect your relationship, they're actually ready to forfeit their own integrity. So I put the mask of codependency up here because sometimes we don't see it for what it is at first. It comes across as something else. So we become the person that others depend on, making them look stronger mentally, emotionally than they really are. So we're like, hey, we're the person that they can always go to. Like, we'll be there for you every time. We can do this. Right? And so they'll never let that person down. They need me to go get you a Tim Hortons coffee at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll do it. You need me to go, take care of this for you, I'll do that. You want me to pick up the kids and cook dinner and make sure that the laundry's done and all the rest of that stuff so that you can just do whatever the heck you want, I can do that too. It's like they start to really forfeit everything inside of themselves, their care, their personal care, their ability to care for other people even, just to make sure that they're maintaining that relationship. Right? Become professional volunteers. No one in this room. But professional volunteers routinely going beyond their call of duty to demonstrate their self-worth, but usually to their peril. You'll see people in situations like this, burnout. And they won't even know it. Like sometimes they're burnt out and they're still serving. Right? Spend a lot of time trying to convince others what they think, feel, and do to feel more secure in the relationship with them. This is really interesting to people. It's like, really? I thought they were the ones who were constantly evaluating on, like, getting feedback from others on how they were supposed to feel. Sometimes, but sometimes what we see in codependency too is that they're actually trying to control how the other person's feeling so that they can feel secure in that relationship. Which is interesting. It's an interesting spin on it, but it actually happens. Where they're like, well, if I can make sure that that other person feels good all the time, then I can feel safe. Right? Yeah. Repeatedly do favors for gifts to, give gifts to, or anticipate the needs of others. So they're constantly attempting to anticipate what's going on, and they're extremely hard on themselves when they miss. Like if they weren't there for you when you really needed them, if they didn't get the gift right, if they didn't show up at the right time, whatever, they'll just, the amount of guilt and shame that they feel, and also the amount of lashes that they'll give themselves is really intense over something like that. They'll even encourage other people to allow them to be their caretaker and confidant, just being like, they'll try to even convince other people, hey, just allow me to take care of you. Once again, that whole idea of being that need to be needed. I can take care of you. I can do this. Allow me to do this, please. Because without that need to be needed, they don't feel worth. Imagine for a moment, because most of us, those of us who have a relationship with Christ, know our worth. I mean, it gets shaken by the world, by what other people say, the rest of that stuff. But we come back to that, right? But imagine not having worth, not knowing where it comes from, not even thinking you have it apart from what someone else says about you. Like, that's a very scary thing for people, right? And that's why we see a lot of issues out there in the world today. I think is why we see a lot of the anxiety that we see in our kids today. And I'm going on a rant right now, I apologize. But it's just like, I think our kids, like a lot of our teenagers, and we see anxieties like through the roof right now in a lot of them. And I think it's because they have no idea of their worth. The fact that they are a cherished child of God who has worth apart from what the world says or anyone else says. Constantly trying to find it from someone else. That's the pure preacher to be coming out of it. So they'll end up doing things, I've covered this already a little bit, but they'll do things like, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk like as if it's not happened to me or anything, but use sex to optimize the chance of acceptance, confusing sex for real intimacy. That's a problem that we see. So if they think that sex will somehow get the other person to be happy, make them feel better, make sure that they're in a good mood, like whatever, even if they don't feel like it, even if they're not interested in it, they'll forfeit all of that, and they'll give that other person what they want in order to try to make the whole situation feel good. But I think that's intimacy, but it's not. It's not real intimacy. Manipulate people in situations where they're connecting or artificially bonding with them. So they're not a real bond there, it's just kind of an artificial one. It's highly dependent on what the other person feels about them. So this is a really quick 3 questions that I grabbed on the internet that are like, what kinds of, how do we tell? I printed off a questionnaire. I stole it. It's on the back table back there. There's only 10 of them. I just say I stole it because I got it from one of the resources that's on my slides. But yeah, it was on a particular website. And there's like a list of different, traits. And they just ask you to answer true or false, true or false, true or false to this. And if you find yourself answering true to more than a few on that page, then chances are you're in a codependent relationship, you really kind of need to evaluate what's going on a little bit, right? And it's not a diagnostic tool, so don't worry, I'm not just handing over like a diagnostic tool or anything like that. But they're just questions for you to ponder and consider, and then go to a person who works in the field to actually have them have that kind of a conversation with you, to actually see if there's anything there. But so are you unable to find satisfaction in your life outside of a specific person? Like, is your satisfaction in life highly dependent upon another person and whether they're happy or not in life? That's a major one to ask yourself. Do you recognize unhealthy behaviors in your partner but stay with them in spite of them? Right? And don't say anything for fear of rocking the boat. Are you giving support to your partner at the cost of your own mental, emotional, and physical health? Those are some red flags, okay? And I don't mean that in a condescending way. Because I was like every single one of these in that relationship that I was in. In a big way. So some signs. Just signs. But honestly, like, and I'm going to say this because, I mean, like, why not? But, like, in my intro, I teach intro psychology, and I'm very afraid to talk to them about certain, like, mental health issues and stuff like that, because they start to self-diagnose immediately. Right? So by the time I'm finished teaching that one class, like, if we've talked about 3 or 4 different disorders, they come up to me and they're like, I've got all of them. You know? And so a lot of the time, the things that we put up there as far as signs and all the rest of that stuff, there are so many that we can even feel that we have completely, that sometimes we're looking at it going, well, I have every single health issue in the diagnostic tool, like every single one, right? And so maybe it's not so much about the fact that we're not supposed to have any of these, maybe it's about, like, how severe are these things. Does that make sense? Low self-esteem, self-efficacy. I put self-efficacy here because I think, like, once again, I think it's a little more important than that one. Just your ability that you feel that you can do apart from. That's not a bad thing. I mean, I know that we're supposed to be in a relationship with one another, supposed to depend on one another, and all the rest of that stuff, but it's okay to feel like you're capable of doing things on your own. That's okay. It's not counter-Christian or anything like that. It's like, you know, there are times when the disciples had to go and do things on their own. Right? God was with them. So I'm just saying, it's not a counter-Christian thing. Low levels of narcissism, family, which is good, but I mean, you know, family dysfunction, depression, anxiety, stress, all those things. A major one right here. I have a really hard time saying no in a lot of different areas of life. Okay? Poor boundaries, emotional reactivity, 5 minutes. The need for control. I didn't do that very, like, you were trying to be all discreet and everything, and I was just like, 5 minutes? I tried. Fixing mistakes, like you said, I mean, some of these are really great things. If they're just being done because you love people and you care about them and all the rest of that stuff. But if it's out of fear and out of the fact that you're worried that they're not going to like you if you don't and all the rest of that stuff, you're crossing the line there. Once again, right? It can become problematic. This is the best question ever. Whenever you have a speaker come in or anything like that, it's like the number one question, right, that you should be able to ask yourself or even ask them if you want. Like, so what? What does that have to do with me? Like, and even if I'm not in a codependent relationship, what do I do with that? You know? What do we do? If you are in a codependent relationship, the first thing to do is acceptance of the fact that you're in a codependent relationship. And I know that you all know what acceptance is all about. First step. Being able to go, like, because I mean, your support group that centers around that kind of a principle, right? It's like, yeah, we need to be able to accept where we're at, wherever we're at, whatever's going on in life. The fact that this is actually the case. You can no longer deny that it's there. Second thing is to take responsibility and behave differently. So what does that look like? Well, the acceptance is a prerequisite for your recovery. We know that. Recognizing and accepting that we become dependent on others for a sense of identity and purpose in life. I mean, I read through them, but it's just like acceptance is really coming face to face with the reality that this is where I'm at currently. Taking self-responsibility. Challenging your assumptions that other people are responsible for your happiness. That's a great step to take. Start to just challenge it. Because like as you start to challenge it more and more, change happens. Slowly but surely. You don't have to climb Everest in a day. You can't. But it's like, if you're starting to look like, how do I change? Well, it starts by even just thinking about it. What would it look like if I wasn't asking everyone else to define who I was? Step into the role, and this sounds harsh, but it's not meant to be. It's tough love. Step into the role of a responsible adult who has the means, power, and right to define their own identity and destiny. I mean, God has your identity. But it's like, just understand that you're that responsible adult who has the ability to do this. Note this. Okay. It's just putting proper boundaries around it. That's all. Don't do it to your peril. Don't do it because you're afraid. Do it because you actually have the ability, the energy, the willingness to do that you actually have the time. You know? And because you feel good about it. And that even if a person, one of the things that they tried to really work out of us in our counseling, our master's degrees in counseling, was this whole idea that we were going to fix someone or that these other people needed us. They were like, you're in it for the wrong reason if that's your case. You need to stop thinking that these people need you and that you're going to be the one that fixes them. These people are going to need to take some steps on their own. Right? And it's like, right. Okay. And then we need to behave differently. It isn't rocket science. Like, you don't need a degree to know what this is talking about, because like literally it's just about altering behaviors that really become kind of second nature to us over time. Now it's not easy to do. It's just it's not really complex, if that makes sense. Right? Doing things like acknowledging our own inherent worth and value. It might take some work, but it's not rocket science, right? Setting a boundary, saying no. I hate saying no. Like, it's like, ugh, right? Because as soon as you say no, someone's going to get offended. It's like, darn. Anything got to live with that guilt. Please remember this. This is one of the most important elements I could ever reinforce over and over and over again. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to regress. That's normal. That's human. And the more that we become accepting of that and judge ourselves less for it, the quicker we're going to actually be able to move through this. Because it's like, right, I'm a human, I made a mistake. Okay. All right. So, take responsibility for your self-care. Process your childhood if you have to, if that's where things are coming from. Practice healthy detachment, just meaning practice making sure you have those boundaries in place, making sure that you're doing things for the right reasons, setting proper boundaries, and then exercising your no muscle. The steps that they say are really good, right? I agree with 100%. I just wanted to end with a couple of things. One, just letting you know about things that are out there that can be super helpful because you're like, well, how do you know a good boundary? You've never even heard of boundaries before. The only boundaries you know about are a fence or up around someone's property. And it's like, okay, fine. There's great groups here in Red Deer. Some of them are like women's groups that are out there, right? You can get like at the Women's Outreach Center, and they're actually classes you can go to. There's even men's ones. And they're even put on by the outreach because they identify the fact that yes, men can be in codependent relationships, yes, men can be in abusive relationships where they're the ones who are being abused, and that it's important for them to have support and help as well. Okay? And I know that there's a ton of stuff on here, but I knew I was going to leave the slides with you guys too, so hopefully you can get some information. And then there's like, just to let you know, family services is great. Central Alberta Women's Emergency Shelter, Alberta Health Services, these are all areas in Red Deer that you can go, right? Like to get help with identifying codependency and dealing with it. And that's it. So thank you.
How many of you guys learned something you didn't know before? Let's give John a big hand. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I always appreciate every time you're here. The more we get to learn from you, I always take things away. So thank you so much. What we're going to do for time, just to end tonight, you can